with a fee-fi-fo and a hey and a ho and a fiddle and a diddle and a rhyme. The tale you're gonna hear happened such a long time ago. Once upon a time. Once upon a time.
This is the story of Rapunzel. Once upon a time, there lived a man called David Peckham, who lived with his wife Victoria on a picturesque farm in a beautiful little village called Sunnyhampton. They had a happy life and were very, very popular amongst their neighbours. The only thing that made this doting couple sad was that they didn't have a child. At the back of the garden was a high wall. Although the wall was vast and went right through Sunnyhampton, no one had ever dared to climb it, for the land behind belonged to the wicked witch, Imelda. One day, Victoria noticed there was a crack in the wall, and as she peered through, she saw a row of trees bearing the most delicious apples she had ever seen.
"Cool, they look scrumptious,"
she whispered to herself. From that day on, for many weeks, she spent hours looking through the crack in the wall, dreaming of tasting the magnificent-looking apples. Every day, Victoria cooked for David, but could eat nothing herself.
"You must eat something, dear," said David. "You're looking very, very thin and pale." "I tell you what I really, really want. I want to have some of them apples in Witch Imelda's garden," said Victoria, with a look of desperation in her eyes. "Then I'll better scale the wall and fetch some of these apples for you," said David.
That very night, when the clock struck 12, David climbed the wall and he entered Imelda's garden. He gathered the apples from the trees, and when he got home, he gave Victoria the bag of apples, and she devoured them instantly.
"Oh my," said Victoria. "These apples were even better than I'd anticipated."
The next day at midnight, David scaled the wall once again and entered Imelda's garden. Suddenly, from behind the trees, the witch appeared.
What do you think you are doing, trespassing on my land?
I knew it was you stealing the apples last night, she rasped. However, Imelda became more sympathetic when David explained how his wife had become obsessed with the apples.
Okay, I won't put a curse on you, said Imelda. You can take as many of the apples as you like, but when your wife has a child, the child will become mine. You will bring the child to me.
A frightened David agreed, and he quickly took another sack of apples back to his wife. Years later, Victoria gave birth to their first child. Then Imelda suddenly appeared. And claimed the child for herself, much to the heartbreak of David and Victoria. Imelda, the witch, called the child Rapunzel, and she grew up into a beautiful girl with long blonde flowing hair. When Rapunzel reached the age of 14, the witch took her to the top of a tower in a remote woodland area. There was one small window at the top, but the witch bricked in the door to stop Rapunzel escaping. When Imelda came to bring food and water, poor Rapunzel was forced to let her long golden plait dangle out of the window, right down to the floor, so the witch could use her hair to climb the wall. A few years passed, and one day a handsome prince riding a black stallion was passing when he heard the sound of Rapunzel singing. The prince, whose name was Ernest, fell in love with the sweet sound of Rapunzel's voice coming from the top of the tower singing a beautiful lullaby. But then he saw Witch Imelda approaching the tower, so he hid behind a bush to watch. Prince Ernest was amazed when he heard Imelda cackle, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. And when the beautiful golden plaid tumbled from the window, the prince was amazed to see the old witch use it as a rope to scramble up the wall. Well, the next day when the prince approached the tower, he too shouted out, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. As the plaited hair came tumbling down the wall, Prince Ernest used it to climb up to the window. Rapunzel was delighted to see the handsome prince standing there instead of the witch, and as he stepped into the room, he told her how he admired her beautiful singing. Ernest's visits became more frequent. By and by, the two of them fell in love. I have a plan, said Rapunzel one day. Each time you visit, bring a piece of silk. We can weave the pieces of silk together to make a rope, and when it's long enough, I can climb down the wall of the tower to spend the rest of my life with you. Prince Ernest's visits continued, and the silk ladder they wove became longer and longer. However, one day, as the prince left the tower, he was seen by the evil witch Imelda, and she was furious. You have been intruding on my property, young man, and you have been visiting my beloved daughter. You may look like a prince, but not for much longer, she said whilst producing a magic wand. She waved the wand in the air and cackled. No magic trick will save your soul, for now you are a dwarf-like troll. Within seconds, poor Prince Ernest had been transformed into a tiny, ugly, dwarf-like troll, and petrified of the witch, he ran into the forest and took refuge in a dark and dingy cave.
Oh, what am I going to do? I've been cursed,
cried the prince in his new dwarf-like voice.
I'm sure I'm destined to die here in this gloomy cave.
Meanwhile, Imelda confronted Rapunzel. I will make you pay for betraying me, Rapunzel, and letting another person into your world. She took Rapunzel to a dark and sinister everglade that was surrounded by dangerous animals, such as bears and bats with huge white fangs. For months on end, poor Rapunzel wandered around the woods, living on her wits and eating fruit and wild mushrooms. Then, one day, she passed the cave where the poor prince had taken refuge. It was here she heard the sound of a dwarf sobbing. When she entered the cave, Rapunzel found the sobbing dwarf, and she recognised the clothes he was wearing. She knew straight away that he was none other than her prince. Prince Ernest looked up and was astonished and delighted to see Rapunzel.
Rapunzel, Rapunzel, it's me, the prince. I've loved you from the day I set eyes on you, and I always will.
The two of them embraced, and as Rapunzel kissed him gently on the cheek, the witch's spell was broken, and Prince Ernest suddenly regained his handsome looks and his princely voice. Rapunzel was reunited with her doting parents, David and Victoria Peckham, and she and the prince set a date for their wedding. As for Witch Imelda, she was so dumbfounded at the news of the couple's wedding that she began to lose the will to live. Under Prince Ernest's instruction, a spell was put on Imelda by a royal druid that turned her into a harmless but ugly toad. With her dark heart in pieces, she hopped into a nearby pond and was never seen again.
Ribbit, ribbit.